Before we dive into this thrilling story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Your support keeps us going. Now, let's get into it. They say Christmas is about love, joy, and family, but I've come to associate it more with emotional landmines wrapped in shiny paper. Last year, my sister got a MacBook. The year before that, she got a trip to Lisbon. This year, she opened an envelope and gasped. Barcelona? Like she was auditioning for a luxury travel ad. The airline logo shimmered like it was winking at me. My parents beamed. "We wanted you to have another opportunity to expand your global network," my dad said, with the tone of a man announcing a Nobel Peace Prize, not a third vacation. I mean, field research trip. In 12 months. My mom nodded solemnly and added, "To grow your career." Then, almost as an afterthought, she turned to me and handed over a medium-sized package wrapped in recycled paper. "And maybe this will help you grow yours." I smiled. I always smile when I want to cry, scream, or dissolve into sarcastic laughter that might be misread as unhinged. I unwrapped it carefully, already sensing the sting, and there it was, a book. Not just any book. A paperback with a cartoon woman on the cover, clearly in her 30s, clinging to a juice box and a glitter wand, surrounded by fluttering bills and a rubber ducky. The title, How to Grow Up. The subtitle, Stop Being a Toddler in a Grown-Up Body. Charming. I stared at it, waiting for the joke. None came. No wink, no elbow nudge, just my mom launching into how she also bought a copy for her coworker who still uses smiley faces in emails. The horror. My sister was too busy admiring the gold foil on her boarding pass to notice the flicker on my face. Barcelona. She breathed, like she had just tasted heaven. I was 31 years old and receiving a book that might as well have come with a pacifier bookmark, while my sister was handed the keys to Europe. And this wasn't new. This wasn't an isolated misstep in the delicate art of gift-giving. This was tradition. My tradition. My very own Christmas ritual. Get something passive-aggressive while my sister gets something aspirational. Like last year, when she got a laptop. For her studies. And I got a laminated to-do list for organizing the garage. Handwritten. In Comic Sans. Or the year she got a smartwatch, and I got socks that said, "Adulting is hard," with a tiny wine glass embroidered on the side. Hilarious. I've learned not to expect much. I work full-time in a kindergarten, which is a lot like trying to keep 25 tiny comedians from gluing each other to the floor while also teaching them the alphabet. It's loud. It's sticky. It's honest. There's no pretending to be perfect, no smug declarations about networking potential. Just kids who either love you completely or throw Legos at your head. And honestly, I prefer that kind of honesty. I used to do children's parties on weekends, balloon animals, glitter wings, the whole whimsical circus. My sister once joked, "You're the only person I know who owns 6 pairs of sparkly wings and no winter coat." My parents never called it a business. They called it the clown job. Even though I never once dressed as a clown. Because I respect children. And I respect myself. But the parties had dwindled. Not because I stopped loving them, but because I didn't have the time. Most weekends, I was babysitting my niece. For free. Because, as my mom says, it takes a village. Apparently, I'm the whole village. The babysitter, the pediatrician, the emotional support goat. The default. So when I got that book, How to Grow Up, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't flip the table like I might have fantasized about during particularly bad Mondays. I just smiled and took a sip of the lukewarm cocoa I'd made for everyone. I looked at my sister glowing like a Christmas ad and thought about how I could be a grown woman and still feel like the understudy in my own family. I could be 31 and still the one cleaning up after everyone else's dinner. The dependable one. The helper. The extra set of hands. Not the star. Never the star. Later that night, after the potluck dinner, where my homemade rosemary potatoes were upstaged by my sister's canned cranberry sauce, my dad looked at her with adoration and said, "Wow, Amelia, this is delicious. Did you make it yourself?" She blinked. I literally opened a can. He laughed like she had just solved a national crisis. "You've always been the practical one." I almost choked. I offered to help clean up, and my mom handed me a trash bag. "You've always been good at this stuff," she said. "That's what I admire about you. You're not too proud to do the little jobs." And that's when it hit me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't need to grow up. Just not in the way they thought. Not in a, get a better job, or be more like your sister, kind of way. But in the start acting like someone who deserves respect kind of way. So later that night, while the glitter on my fur caught the faint streetlight glow, I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop and drafted a message. Not angry. Not snide. Just clear. Kind. Boundaried. Because maybe the greatest act of growing up is realizing you don't have to keep playing the role someone else assigned to you just because they never imagined you'd walk off the stage. I didn't send the message right away. It sat in my drafts for nearly 3 days, blinking back at me like it was daring me to hit send. Every time I hovered over it, my heart picked up pace, not because I didn't mean what I'd written, but because I'd never said it out loud before. I'd never said no. I'd never told my family that I mattered. I was the reliable one, the default, the yes-go. I was the, of course I'll help. The, sure I can cancel. The one who could always be counted on, to stay silent, to show up, to give up. But after that Christmas, after that ridiculous book, something inside me cracked just enough to let in some light. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. I sent the message at 6:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. I figured that way, I'd be busy enough wrangling toddlers to avoid obsessively checking for replies. I let my sister know that starting in the new year, I would no longer be available for regular weekend babysitting. I told her that while I love my niece dearly, I needed to prioritize my own life, my time, my energy. I also informed her, gently, that I would no longer be contributing to her tuition or travel funds. I believe in your dreams, I wrote, but I also need to invest in my own. It was the most adult thing I'd ever written, and I felt like I might throw up. She didn't reply. Not right away. But my phone did ring 4 times that morning, all from my mom. I let them go to voicemail. I had work. Real work. Work that involved convincing a 3-year-old that glue sticks were not, in fact, edible. Work that meant something. Because those kids, they saw me. Not as a fallback, not as a resource to be drained, but as a person. A whole person. Miss M. The one who made them feel safe, who turned paper bags into lions, who could mediate a crayon dispute like a tiny diplomat in glitter sneakers. By Friday, I had 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and 1 group text from my mother. We're just very surprised. This feels out of character. Please reconsider, for the sake of the family. That part made me laugh out loud in the break room. Out of character. As if being chronically accommodating was my defining trait. As if politely saying no was some kind of moral rebellion. But here's what they didn't understand, maybe what I hadn't fully understood myself until then. I had been invisible for so long, I didn't even realize I was fading. I had been so focused on being good that I forgot to be whole. My entire identity was built around usefulness. Not ambition. Not talent. Not dreams. Usefulness. When my sister needed money, I found a way. When she needed help with her baby, I cleared my schedule. When she needed space to chase her glossy career, I quietly became the cushion that caught everything she dropped. I did it all. And I did it without asking for anything in return, because I thought that's what good people did. That's what love looked like. That's what family meant. But love without respect isn't love. It's servitude dressed up in sentimentality. I remember once, years ago, my sister got a B on a chemistry test and my parents hosted what can only be described as a mini intervention. Tutors were arranged. Study calendars were created. Meanwhile, when I won a storytelling contest at age 11, dressed as a dinosaur, no less, I got a polite smile and a "Don't show off too much." That was the pattern. Her achievements were monuments. Mine were moments. Her dreams were investments. Mine were hobbies. When she said she wanted to work in diplomacy, they cleared up the guest room and turned it into a study. When I said I wanted to work with kids, they asked if I'd considered a backup plan. They thought I was sweet. They thought I was nice. But they never thought I was serious. They never thought I was grown. And I believed them. That's the part that hurts the most, not the way they treated me, but the way I absorbed it. Internalized it. I called my own passions silly. I downplayed my work. I let people call me a glorified babysitter while I was literally shaping little human minds every day. I let them treat my weekends as open slots on their calendar. I said yes to everything, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know I was allowed to say no. The shift didn't happen all at once. It started quietly. That first message was a seed. Saying, "I'm not available this weekend," was an act of quiet rebellion. Not sending money felt like recovering a missing limb. And the silence that followed? It wasn't peaceful, not at first. It was loud in its judgment. My parents didn't scream or lash out. They just sent guilt like smoke signals. "Your sister's under a lot of stress. We miss how close you used to be. You've always been so generous." Translation: how dare you stop being useful? But I held firm. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I said no to one of Amelia's errand requests, and went to a farmer's market alone instead. I bought myself overpriced jam and walked through a used bookstore without checking my phone once. I turned down a last-minute babysitting plea and took myself to the movies. No one called me childish. No one handed me a diaper bag. I watched a rom-com, laughed out loud, and cried a little when the credits rolled, not because of the movie, but because it was the first time in a long time I did something entirely for me. And then came the party. Not the official one. Not the Pinterest-perfect, pastel-coordinated, professionally photographed birthday bash that Amelia threw for Elodie and posted on social media like a parenting trophy. I wasn't invited to that one. What I got was a post. A photo of Elodie in a bouncy castle, holding a cake bigger than her head. The caption read, "Some families are born. Others show up." I wasn't tagged. Neither were any of my relatives. That night I didn't rage. I didn't spiral. I sat on my couch, ate popcorn I didn't want, and then I made a decision. I booked a community hall. I pulled out the costume bins. I called a few parents from work. The next weekend, I threw a party. Not a counter party. Not a revenge party. A real one. A magical, glitter-filled, chaotic, loud, laughter-soaked celebration just for Elodie. We made crowns. We put on a puppet show. I let her spray glitter confetti until it looked like a unicorn exploded. She hugged me so hard at the end I nearly toppled over. Best birthday ever. She whispered, and I believed her. Because in that moment, I wasn't the helper. I wasn't the extra set of hands. I wasn't the invisible one. I was the aunt who showed up, not for clout, not for credit, but for love. The kind of love that doesn't require sacrifice to be valid. The kind of love that says, "You matter too." That party didn't fix everything. But it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Of who I am when I'm not shrinking to fit someone else's story. That was the beginning. The moment the fog started to lift. The moment I realized that growing up wasn't about abandoning the parts of me that sparkle. It was about protecting them. It was about choosing myself. Not selfishly. Just fully. I didn't owe anyone my silence. I didn't owe anyone my time. And I definitely didn't owe anyone my joy. I should have known the glitter wouldn't settle quietly. The day after the party, I was still sweeping sparkles from my kitchen floor, humming one of the puppet songs under my breath, when I received the first vague text from Amelia. It simply read, "She's confused. Keeps talking about your party like it was the real one." Not helpful. No greeting. No punctuation. Just irritation thinly veiled as concern. I didn't reply. Because of course Elodie thought my party was the real one. It had love, and laughter, and should have fueled chaos. It wasn't sterile or posed. It didn't have a hashtag. It had joy. Then came the second message. This time from Mom. "Your sister is upset. Elodie keeps asking for you and calling our party boring. This is not okay. Not okay." That was rich. What wasn't okay, apparently, was a child having a good time. I didn't respond to that either. Not out of spite. Out of peace. The kind I had been clinging to like a lifeline ever since I stopped being the family's unpaid intern. But peace has a way of attracting war when you're surrounded by people who think boundaries are personal attacks. I didn't realize how fast things would escalate. Apparently, sometime during daycare, Elodie, bless her bold, chaotic soul, told her teacher, "My mommy's party boring. My fairy auntie's party fun." She even tried to shove one of my glitter stickers into her cubby. For next time. I found that out from the daycare teacher herself, who texted me laughing about how Elodie had declared me the queen of parties, and demanded that snack time include confetti. It was adorable. Until it wasn't. That same week, I was pulled aside at work. My boss looked uncomfortable, like she was about to tell me I'd accidentally emailed a meme to the entire school board. Instead, she said someone, unnamed, but heavily implied, had contacted the center to ask if any children had ever been removed from class without authorization by a staff member. I blinked. My ears buzzed. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might vomit. Removed? Unauthorized? They were fishing. They were throwing around the suggestion that I had done something illegal. Something dangerous. For throwing a birthday party. I sat there in the staff room, surrounded by juice boxes and construction paper whales, trying not to panic. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had receipts. I had text messages. I had consent in writing. I pulled up the thread on my phone. Me, hey, just confirming for Saturday. Same drop-off time as last year? Amelia, sure. Just keep it simple. No need to go overboard. Me, all clear to do it at the community hall? Amelia, fine. Just text me the address. Crystal clear. Permission, confirmation, even a casual dig about me. Going overboard. And yet she was out here implying I'd somehow kidnapped her child with glitter and paper crowns. That night, I created a folder on my desktop and labeled it, "In case they lose their minds." Inside, Every message, every RSVP, every receipt for the hall rental, every confirmation that Elodie had been dropped off willingly. I even included the text from Amelia the night before. We'll drop her off around 11. Thanks again. If they wanted war, fine. But I would bring the receipts. Then I sent a message. Not to Amelia. To her email, where it would be formal, traceable, undeniable. Hi Amelia. Since I'm now hearing from others that you're suggesting I took Elodie without permission, I've attached a full record of your written consent. If this continues, or if my workplace receives another false inquiry, I'll be consulting legal counsel. I love Elodie, but I will not tolerate being slandered for hosting a party you approved. Best M. She didn't reply. But my mom did. This is family, not court. You're being cold again. Please come talk it through. Cold. That was their favorite word for me. Not hurt. Not mistreated. Cold. As if the problem was temperature, not trauma. As if my refusal to smile through betrayal was the real offense. What they never seemed to grasp was that I wasn't trying to freeze them out. I was trying to survive. I was trying to breathe. And all the while, Elodie kept asking for me. Her daycare teacher sent me a message. She tried to call you on a play phone today. Said she was inviting you to her party part 2. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled. Then I cried. But I didn't reach out. Not even when Amelia posted another photo. This one of Elodie playing in the backyard, the caption reading, "Home is where the real family is." Not even when my parents posted a cryptic message on Facebook about misguided relatives who think children are toys to be one. I said nothing. Because I didn't need to fight lies with more noise. I had truth. And apparently, I wasn't the only one who noticed. A week later, I got a call from my uncle, the good one. The one who once brought me carrot cake on a Tuesday because, "You look like you needed some sweetness," he said. I saw the posts. Everyone's talking. It's ridiculous. I sighed. I didn't do anything wrong. I know, he said. We all know. Apparently, my grandma had called Amelia to ask what the hell was going on. Amelia hung up. My cousin messaged me privately, saw the party pics. Elodie looked so happy. You're amazing with her. And then came a DM from someone I barely remembered. A friend of Amelia's, someone I met once at a baby shower. She wrote, "Hey, I know it's not my place, but the way they've been talking about you, it's not okay. If you ever need someone to back you up, I'm here." It was small, but it felt enormous. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the villain. I was just the first one to say no. That weekend, I got 3 new party bookings from parents who'd seen the fairy party photos. One of them said, "We've done the usual stuff, clowns, bounce houses, but what you created," that felt like real joy. That's what I realized. Amelia's party was impressive. But mine was real. Hers had perfect pastels. Mine had magic. Hers had a photographer. Mine had connection. Monday morning, a letter arrived. Amelia's handwriting. A short note. I overreacted. I was scared. I didn't like that Elodie was so happy without me. You did nothing wrong. I'm sorry. I understand if you want distance, but if you ever want to see her again, I hope you'll let me know. I folded the letter and placed it next to the glitter wand Elodie left behind. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Forgiveness takes time. But I did reply. I love Elodie. I'm always happy to see her. But I won't be part of a family system that turns love into control. If we're rebuilding anything, it starts with truth. She didn't respond. But 3 weeks later, she sent a video. Elodie was dancing in the tutu I gave her, twirling, glitter flying everywhere. At the end, she stopped spinning, waved at the camera and said, "I love my fairy auntie." And that was all the reply I needed. It's been 3 years. Elodie is 5 now, talkative, wildly imaginative, and currently convinced she's part unicorn. She tells people her fairy auntie taught her how to fly, and I never correct her. Because in a way, I did. I taught her that magic doesn't have to come from wands or wings. It can come from choosing yourself when it's hardest, from standing up for joy in a world that keeps asking you to shrink. I see her regularly now. Not as often as I used to, but enough. Enough to keep our connection alive, enough for her to still light up when she sees me. Her parents don't exactly love it, but they allow it, mostly because she adores me, and even they can't argue with that. Amelia finished her degree eventually. It wasn't easy without my financial help. She had to cut back on travel, decline some unpaid book career-boosting programs, and take out a hefty loan. She struggled. She stumbled. She adapted. And in her own way, she grew up too. She works now. It's not glamorous. It's not international. It's certainly not what she used to boast about during holiday dinners. But it's hers. She's doing okay, just not on a pedestal anymore. My parents, we maintain what I'd call a polite distance. There's the occasional birthday message, the once-in-a-blue moon photo share, a few neutral family updates delivered with the emotional resonance of a weather report. They still don't really get it. They still think I overreacted, that I made things harder than they needed to be. But they also never offered a real apology, just silence, followed by the occasional guilt-laced text like, "Your sister's doing her best." Well, we all miss how things used to be. But the thing is, I don't. Because how things used to be meant disappearing, meant performing, meant living under someone else's definition of maturity, ambition, value. Now I live on my own terms. I run a small business doing creative workshops for kids. My calendar is packed 2 months out with birthday party bookings, art sessions, and storytelling gigs. I've spoken at early childhood education events. I even hired a part-time assistant named Bree. She's better at balloon animals than I'll ever be, and has a laugh that could power a small town. My days are full of finger paint, laughter, the occasional tantrum, and more love than I ever thought a workspace could hold. I still wear glitter. I still do silly voices. I still get paint in my hair and glue on my sleeves. But no one calls it childish anymore. They call it booked. They call it joyful. They call it magic. And sometimes, when the apartment is quiet and the only sound is the faint whir of my printer preparing puppet templates for the next day, I think about that book. How to Grow Up. Still tucked on my bookshelf, still mocking me with its tacky font and cartoon cover. But now I see it less as a dig and more as a misplaced catalyst. A strange little spark that helped light a fire I didn't know I was allowed to carry. Because growing up was never about losing the glitter or shoving the fairy wings. It was about knowing when to use them, and who deserves to see them. It was about refusing to hand over my joy to people who never knew how to hold it. About protecting the parts of myself that made me feel most alive. Not everyone will understand that. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to. I used to worry that I went too far. That maybe I should have been softer. Should have tried harder to keep the peace. But peace that costs your personhood isn't peace, it's performance. And I've done enough of that for a lifetime. Now I get to be real. Not just good. Not just helpful. Real. I remember the moment I knew I'd truly reclaimed my life. It wasn't the email, or the confrontation, or even the fairy party. It was a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks ago, during a puppet show I was running at a local library. A little boy in the front row, wide-eyed and sticky-fingered, looked up at me mid-performance and whispered, "Are you a real fairy?" And without hesitation, I smiled and said, "Absolutely. But don't tell anyone. It's a secret." His eyes sparkled. He clutched his paper crown tighter. And in that moment, I wasn't a disappointment. I wasn't someone's backup plan. I was a whole world wrapped in wonder. That night, I went home, collapsed on my couch, and cried, not from sadness, but from fullness. From the quiet, overwhelming feeling that comes when your life finally fits. Not someone else's version of it. Yours. A few days after, I got a text from Amelia. No drama. No guilt. Just a video of Elodie dancing around the living room. The tutu I gave her still miraculously in one piece, glitter trailing behind her like a comet. At the end, she stops spinning, looks straight into the camera, and says, "I love my fairy auntie." I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because I didn't have to defend myself anymore. I didn't need their permission. I didn't need their approval. I had built something stronger, truth, purpose, joy. They tried to ruin my name. I built a life instead. And maybe this is what growing up really means. Not throwing away your magic. Not hardening yourself into something palatable. But choosing. Every day. Choosing peace over performance. Boundaries over burnout. Choosing to be a real adult. The kind who owns 6 sets of fairy wings and a spreadsheet for glitter inventory. The kind who no longer says yes just to avoid conflict. The kind who raises her hand and says, "No more. I deserve better." So no, I don't miss how things used to be. I don't miss being useful at the cost of being seen. I don't miss shrinking so others could shine. My life now? It's mine. And it's beautiful. Sometimes I still get messages from distant relatives or acquaintances who saw the social media fallout and are just now catching up. They ask, "Was it really that bad?" Or, "Don't you think family should come first?" And I always say the same thing. I didn't stop loving them. I just started loving myself too. And if you've ever been there, ever had to choose your peace over their comfort, your joy over their expectations, then you know how terrifying and freeing it is to finally say no. You know the weight that lifts when you stop proving and start living. When you stop being the supporting character in your own story. So was I wrong to draw the line when I did? Did I wait too long? Maybe. But what matters is that I drew it. And now, I walk on the side where my joy lives. Where the paint is always wet, the kids always laugh too loud, and the glitter never quite disappears. Sometimes, the loudest awakenings come wrapped in silence, not in grand betrayals or explosive arguments, but in the quiet, repeated moments of being overlooked, underestimated, and expected to endure. This story wasn't about one dramatic rupture. It was about a woman slowly realizing that her life, though filled with kindness and effort, had become a stage for everyone else's needs except her own. The lesson? That goodness, when given without boundaries, becomes a trap. That love, when unreciprocated and expected like a service, loses its soul. And perhaps most importantly, that growing up isn't about changing who you are, it's about owning who you've always been. For too long, she believed being the good one meant being available, being quiet, being useful. She said yes out of habit, out of guilt, out of fear that if she stopped giving, she'd stop mattering. But the truth is, love doesn't require self-erasure. Being dependable shouldn't mean being disposable. The moment she realized that setting a boundary didn't make her cold, it made her whole, was the moment her life started to shift. And that's a lesson so many of us need to learn, that saying no isn't a rejection of love, it's a declaration of self-worth. She didn't stop caring for her niece. She didn't stop being kind. What she stopped doing was allowing others to weaponize her kindness. She began to understand that her time, energy, and emotional labor were not infinite resources to be mined by those who offered no return. She realized that helping becomes harmful when it enables entitlement, and that family loyalty should never come at the cost of self-respect. There's a powerful metaphor in how the family reacted to her joy, how a child's love for her, fairy auntie, became a threat, how a glitter-filled party sparked suspicion instead of celebration. What does it say about a dynamic when happiness is only welcome if it follows a script? When authenticity is punished and appearances are prioritized over connection? This story challenges us to re-examine the roles we've been given in our families, our relationships, our communities. Have we been cast as the peacemaker, the helper, the quiet one, because that's who we are, or because that's who they needed us to be? And what happens when we stop performing? The answer is, real life begins. Not the life curated by others, but the one built on your own terms. For her, it was filled with paint-splattered aprons, laughter from sticky-fingered toddlers, and late-night crafting sessions that brought real joy. It wasn't prestigious or glamorous by traditional standards. But it was honest. It was hers. That's the second great lesson here. Success doesn't need to be loud, shiny, or LinkedIn-worthy. Sometimes success looks like waking up peaceful. Like laughing without needing permission. Like finally doing something because you want to. Not because someone else needs you to. When she stood up for herself, they called her cold. When she stopped giving freely, they called her selfish. When she refused to sacrifice her well-being for their comfort, they acted like she was the one who had changed. But the truth is, she hadn't changed, she'd simply stopped pretending. That's the third and perhaps most universal truth from this story. When you start respecting yourself, people who've benefited from your self-neglect will call it a betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's liberation. And liberation always comes with a cost. She lost closeness. She lost her role in a system that depended on her silence. But in return, she gained something far more valuable: clarity, purpose, peace, and real joy. Not the kind you post for approval, but the kind that lives in quiet moments. Like a child's hug, a sparkle of recognition, or a handmade crown passed between generations. This story reminds us that you are allowed to grow into a version of yourself that others didn't expect. You are allowed to disappoint people who only loved you when you were convenient. You are allowed to say, "This is enough. I am enough. And I won't play small to make you comfortable anymore." That kind of growth might not be celebrated by everyone, but it will be felt deeply by those who matter. And most importantly, by yourself. So if you've ever felt like the background character in your own life, if you've ever been praised for how quietly you endure, if you've ever been called too much, the moment you stop being agreeable, this is your sign. You don't have to keep giving pieces of yourself away to be worthy. You don't have to carry everyone else's dreams while yours gather dust. You can draw a line. You can say no. You can choose you. And in doing so, you might just discover that the most magical, grown-up thing you could ever do is finally live for yourself.